Okay, so good afternoon. We have today with us Rafael Musni. Is it pronounced with the Z? Musni or Musni?
More an S.
More like an S. Musni. Okay. And he is a financial professional and he does other things too on the side, right?
I
Yes.
hope so. And I hope
Okay.
I do them well.
Okay. So, Rafael, just to get to know you better, how long have you been in that industry and the
In
financial?
this business, I've had my licenses since 2012.
Okay, 4 years. More.
Yeah, lucky seven. Think lucky seven.
Oh, okay.
Um, and just as I was mentioning before the show, I started studying for them, about 2010, 2011. And I was deep into studying them when I realized that studying itself was boring. I knew I would like the job interacting with people, teaching them about, good financial practices and concepts. But the studying for myself, that wasn't interesting. And because I was going through a challenging time in my life, I decided I should try something that's fun and that's very present and very different from what I'm studying.
Okay.
So I chose to become a commercial actor.
Which you are now?
Well, I've done it from time to time,
Okay.
and I do most of the acting I do now is more for community purposes. It's community theater, and I do it just for fun.
Oh, okay. Like a community play.
A comedy, a drama, a musical. I do about one musical a year.
Okay. So, when do you know that you are yourself and when do you know you are acting?
Oh, I never mix those two up.
You don't.
No, I don't. I don't because when you're acting, the way I choose to act, you are creating a story for other people so that they can be free.
And you're impersonating the character.
Impersonation is the very basic form of acting,
Okay.
where you're copying. You're just
Copying.
copying for the surface effect, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great place to start. But where you really want to be is a place where the audience can actually see that person, that character's point of view, and to keep that point of view valid.
Yeah.
Um,
So then they feel that you did represent the character.
Represented the character, and that they see the motive for the character. And it might be they themselves might do something different. They might choose a different path, but you really want them to see that the choices that the character is making are valid for that character. Because
Oh.
sometimes you have to portray a character. I had to portray a character that was very mean one time, very very not a very good human being,
Oh.
and it would have been
How,
easy.
how did you do that?
It was a
Because you're
challenge.
not a mean
I'm
person.
not a mean person, and that's what made it a great challenge.
Oh.
And so, for that particular character, who was a gangster, um, what I really accessed was his view of how the world treated him. And
Oh.
in his view, the world was mean to him, they didn't care about him, and that he had to fight for everything.
Oh.
And once I realized that that was the motivation, it didn't matter how vile he treated other people, to him it was justified.
Okay. He had. Yeah, I just heard yesterday some how people get into the white supremacist
Mm-hmm.
groups
Mm-hmm.
is because they are recruited when they're very young, like 14, and then they have to really, like 20 years later, realize that they made the wrong choice because they were too young to even think. It was like a socializing kind of group, and then they realized later, what did I get into, you know?
The power of being heard
Yeah,
is far greater than anyone suspects.
yeah.
I used to teach. When I was first out of college, I was a kindergarten to fifth grade science teacher. And what I noticed there is that I would encounter many children that would almost hang on every word, especially if maybe I was in the classroom and it was recess and they were just with me alone. Their access to talk to an adult alone and actually having that adult listen to what they're saying and not judging what they're saying, just listening, was immense. And I realized what a special, opportunity that was to let a child or anyone
Be
have the
influenced.
opportunity to be heard. To be
Oh,
heard is key. And as to your point, I've listened to many stories about how white supremacists are operating right now. They do prey upon people who they suspect are not being heard.
Oh,
And that's their access to them.
okay. Because they are very influenceable at a certain young age. They would join anything
Yes,
just to be social.
whenever you're disaffected, you look for, you seek, you thirst for someone that can hear you and will pay attention to you and see you.
Oh, and that's how they
It's how many
increase.
groups. It's how many groups grow. Sometimes even for good reasons. But
Oh, of course.
even the bad groups have learned this is a good technique for acquiring members.
Oh, a target or something like this. Hopefully, not all groups are like that.
I hope not. I hope
Yeah.
not. Certainly not musical theater groups.
Yeah.
They tend to, and they can be very good at listening to others because
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. So now that you having experienced the teaching part, the acting part, and the financial part, do they all come together as in some way?
they often do come together. Um, my favorite part about finance
Yeah.
is not necessarily me learning about things, although I constantly am learning. It actually is teaching what I've learned
Oh,
and teaching it to different people from different walks of life who learn in different ways. So some people are attached to language. And of course, we often have to use language. But I know some people are far more visual.
yeah.
So there's an expression in financial planning, among financial planners. It's not what you said.
It's how
It's
you.
what they remembered you
Oh,
said.
okay.
So I am always looking for different ways to explain things in such a way that people can remember it without having to look it up or research it again or go back to their notes. And I enjoy
So
doing
you
that.
learned all both the audio and the visual.
Audio, visual. I will often sketch things for clients so that they can remember it. And I look for vehicles, for example, stories, so that they can remember after the meeting what we talked about and what not only what they're going to do financially, but why they're doing it. Because that's often more important.
Or the why.
The why. Yes.
Like they have children to think about.
They have children to think about that. I often find myself in a meeting advocating for what they may not be advocating for. So
They don't even know where.
I try to point out, I've sat with clients and I've said, you've done a wonderful job taking care of your now adult children. It is time to take care of you.
Oh,
Why don't we stop doing or talking about this? Because this is well attended to. But what about you? Your retirement, your time off. You've worked all your life. It's now time to enjoy all that you've done. And that's a
So-
great place to be.
and that's how you get them interested again.
Well, for each person, it's different, but yes, and it's giving them permission to really think about themselves and to plan for that, and then of course to take action because thinking about things doesn't produce any
Oh,
effects.
okay. Isn't
It's
that the
action.
hardest part of your job to get people to not only listen to you but to actually do something? It's the hardest part, no?
I try to be sure to not make anyone do anything. Like a good teacher, I try to lay it out for them, give them their options.
And they make the decision.
They must make the decision. They must make. It cannot be me because if it's me, then
They say maybe I was forced to.
yeah, I don't need that. I don't need that.
So it has to come to them. Obviously, that's what I should do.
Absolutely. And I do expect most people that are already sitting with me are motivated because they did take a meeting and they've set aside the time for the meeting. That's usually the first test that I know that they're serious.
Yeah, if
about
they don't
making
meet with
change.
you, then
Right.
it's not important to them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So I know I met you at a networking event. Are these good for you?
Yes, they're good in meeting other professionals who may need some planning in the future. There are other ways for me to meet people, but I enjoy meeting other professionals, especially in other lines of work,
Yeah.
because when my clients are sitting with me, I know what I can do for them, but they'll often point to things that are troubling them, bothering them, and it's great for me to be able to say, well, this is not my line, but I do know a few people in that industry. Can I refer them to you? Why don't you see if they're going to be able to help you? And that's great because I think that's good teamwork. because I can't solve everyone's problems.
Yeah.
And I want other people who are experts in their field.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we meet the kind of professionals at these meetups that are in different line of work, like real estate or managers of properties or
Hmm.
whatever, but they all want to offer an expertise
Hmm.
to whoever is there. So the real estate guy might need the financial guy, and
Hmm.
vice versa. One day you might want to buy a house. So,
Exactly.
and you have a few cards about real estate brokers or whatever. So you kind of help each other, kind of thing, in some ways at some point in your life.
Absolutely. I've met some of the most interesting professionals. Anne Mahoney, for example, I've known her for a couple of years.
Yeah,
She is a document and forgery specialist.
yeah.
So you can bring her a piece of paper and she can, with her research, tell you, yes, the person that you think signed that paper did sign it or didn't sign it.
Hmm.
So she's often appeared in court to
To
say, yes,
testify?
this is a forgery,
Mm.
or my professional opinion, this is a forgery, and here's why. And she's the one that warned me, and I've heard this from other people, but it stuck with me when she told me that some of the biggest crimes of conceit and deceit occur not from a stranger, but from a family member.
Or they would sign for the family member.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, like on the will.
On the will, on deeds of ownership, on accounts. It's a sad business.
Yeah,
It's a sad
but
piece of
now we
business.
have DocuSign. Anybody can sign.
There are some problems with DocuSign too. Sometimes people forge DocuSign documents by setting up a DocuSign account, getting whoever is sending the account to send it to this other address, and then they sign. How you can undo that is that there's GPS that's attached to DocuSign.
Find out where you were located.
Yes, so you say, well, look, if Bob Smith lives in San Francisco,
How could
and
he sign in New
why is he
York?
signing in? Yeah, exactly. Why is he signing in New York, or something? But you can see that while DocuSign is good, I use DocuSign. You just have to understand and appreciate that every system has a point where it may fail.
Oh, and you have to check.
Yes,
You have to check who signed.
check who signed and register it. And I like wet signature.
It's called what?
I like wet signatures.
Oh, you
Real
mean
ink
real,
on a piece of paper.
Real, I see.
I mean, you may have heard that in the recent past, there's been some problems with people stealing money when a home purchase is being made.
Oh,
The buyer has to send earnest money to the seller, right?
for the deposit?
Yeah, exactly. The big deposit. First, there's a small deposit, like
Mhm.
1%, 3%.
Yeah,
And,
and
then
then-
there's the big deposit, the
Okay.
big check.
Okay.
Now, you can send that by wire,
Yeah.
right? And that's what most people do. That's not what I did. When I bought my house last year, I went to my bank.
Yeah.
I got a physical check. I put it in my pocket. I walked to the other firm that was handling the transaction. They're the third party. I handed it over to them, and I know that they have a real office. I asked for who I was supposed to give the check to. I watched them register it. I walked away. Now, did that take my time? Yeah. It took me a couple of hours, but I know that it happened.
Yeah, but nobody uses checks anymore. I mean, maybe from the old generation, but not the new generation. The new
Absolutely.
generation, they don't even have a checkbook.
Absolutely, but if you knew how many stories there are, and this is my house, right?
Yeah.
Many people have lost their deposits because someone with a computer sends a message to the buyer and says, "Oh, here's the wire information." Now, when you're buying a house, there's many things to sign. You also have your own business, plus your spouse might be sending you
Yeah,
emails, your
yeah.
boss. So much to track, and you just look at the email. Oh, write down those numbers. Okay, here's the wire information. You give that to your bank.
Oh my God.
$40,000, $50,000 gone.
They wired it somewhere else?
They wire it to the wrong account.
Oh.
It's a fairly common scam in home purchases right now.
Oh my God.
I know.
So banks have securities around that, no? They have like double.
They do have security around that, but what they can't do is prevent someone from calling you up and saying, "Here's my account number and here's the routing number."
Oh,
And then you, the customer of the bank, is telling the bank, these are my instructions. So they're attacking the weakest link in the chain, which is the client, the customer.
Okay, but don't they have double verification nowadays?
Well, they are double verifying it, but
It could still
it could
fail.
yes, and these kinds of financial scams are on the uptick. So you have to.
What would the bank do if they found out they wired to the wrong person?
I don't know. I don't know
They
if
must
anyone's.
have
I've heard of people getting their money back, but
when
the-
it's a big amount, it's
but
hard.
it's a lot later. And the
Oh.
thing is, the house they're trying to buy it now, so they have to come up with new money
Oh, right away.
because the sellers. It's not the seller's fault.
He's not going to wait.
Yeah, it's sad but true. So when there's a great risk, it's better to take a greater measure of risk avoidance. So that's why, in my case,
Physically
knowing
you
this
go-
problem, I walked the check over. That way I know who it's going to. I know the company. Yeah.
And so, do you recommend that for your clients?
Well, that's not my area of expertise.
No, but in the financial world, you don't recommend that.
Well, home
People
purchases.
usually wire.
Yes, the use of electronic funds on a regular basis should be. It's very dependable. It's extremely dependable.
Yeah.
Why that has cropped up in the real estate market is because they've identified that as a weak area. So right now, I know good realtors are saying to only follow instructions from people that you know, not from someone that's an assistant.
Online.
Yeah, do it from someone that calls from the office and you know that person.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, but in the financial world, let's say someone wants to put some money in some kind of vehicle. You accept digital transactions.
As a matter of fact, yes.
Okay.
When people are doing that, it's very common to set up an electronic payment that will take place the
And
same
that's
thing.
secure?
And it's very secure. It's very secure. It's safer than sending a check in the mail.
Okay.
It really is.
And then even if they want some of that money back at some point in their life, it's done also a direct transfer to
It's
their
usually
bank.
done. Yeah, it's usually done electronically. However, you can also request a paper check.
Okay.
And depending on the situation, it's good to request one or the other. Usually, the safer one is to request an electronic payment
Okay.
when you're receiving.
Yeah, but and there's that flip of the coin, but the other flip of the coin is the older people, they don't want to do digital. They like to do checks.
Absolutely, and most financial institutions will make an allowance for that. And there's something good about check. I like getting a check.
Oh, okay.
Right, I really do.
It makes you feel good.
It makes me feel good.
You
I take a
can hold
picture
it.
of it. You know,
You hold it in your hand
I
if you want
deposit it
to.
exactly.
Yeah, I can see the difference in feelings. Something you can touch and something is just sent to your account. It's a different feeling when you receive it. I mean, like you said, there's that satisfaction of holding it.
Yeah, well, we also tend to remember things better that way. And I've noticed with very successful people who have done big business deals, you know,
Yeah.
maybe they've built entire buildings like a convention center or a hotel, or they run a magazine. When people start throwing a lot of information in their direction for analysis, sometimes a very common thing is that they'll grab a piece of paper, they'll start sketching out the information. Just give me the top numbers, and then they'll say, look, this is not a complicated problem. A good leader takes a complicated problem and they break it down into simpler, smaller chunks instead of letting the minutia get in the way. They stay focused on a big picture, an overarching idea. They take something complex and they break it down into simple elements.
And that's what you do, I assume, with your clients. If they don't understand the whole picture, you just go step by step.
That's right. Sometimes I just had a meeting on Friday, and someone, a couple, they're just recently married. They came at me, and I've known the woman for a number of years, and they're saying, "Oh, and what about my traditional IRA? And what about my 401k? And what about my husband's new 401k? And we don't have insurance." And I said, "Wait a minute. Let's just calm down.
Yeah, let's put
Well-
it together.
We'll put it together. There's probably many things that we need over time."
Yeah.
But there's probably only one or two things that we can actually accomplish in this
Now.
meeting.
Now,
But
because
let's be even simpler. What are we trying to accomplish? And that's when I start to go into my explanation. Let's just simplify things. I try to tell people red. Red's a popular color.
Yeah.
Think of red. You should have accounts for your retirement,
Yeah.
for an emergency, and for dreams. You should know where those accounts are and how you can get money out of them and when you should take money out of them. Obviously, you should always think if your retirement account is something you're not going to touch for a good long time. It's money that you put it away pretty much for good. There's a couple of instances when you're allowed to take money out, usually a small piece of that money for a home purchase. Other than that, just leave it alone.
Then you get them started on a path, and then you can see what other things they might need later.
Exactly. And I also have to review with them, at least on an annual basis, where their accounts are and how they're doing. A lot of people are worried because they hear good stories and bad stories and horror stories about retirement, and most people only retire once. So it's not an area where you get lots of experience and fix the mistakes because you only have one lifetime.
Oh,
right?
One life to live, yeah.
That's the good thing about working with a professional, since a professional has worked with many, many couples, and they've encountered people at the start of their career, in the middle of their career, and at the end of their career and going into retirement. They've heard all the stories, and so that they have a repository of what is in common with the successful people that have retired. Successful being that they have enough money to live on, a little extra to spare, and they're generally not worried about, well, I have enough money next year.
Okay. So, yeah, so you don't do everything the first month.
You can't. You couldn't.
Okay.
You would be overwhelmed. I would be overwhelmed. It's too much. A good professional starts with finding out what the facts are. Maybe the person has a job, but they've not started their retirement. Or maybe they started a retirement, but they really don't know how it's working for them or what
They
they're
just
contributing.
let the company do it.
Yeah, they just signed up. They checked the boxes. Or now they clicked online.
401k, that's
Exactly.
it. Okay.
And
They
what
don't
I-
even know what's going on.
Exactly. So one of the first things I do is I say, well, here's how a 401k works.
And you tell them.
And I explain it's your company is doing the accounting for you. A different company is actually managing the funds, but you're ultimately in charge of that account. You say how
decide.
much goes in. You can even decide how aggressive or how non-aggressive, how conservative the selections are.
You want to be, and then take it from there.
Right. And I also remind them, and remember, that's not the only retirement account you can set up. You can still set up one on your own if you feel that might not be enough money.
Okay. And you get them started on that path.
I try to get them started on the path. I also try to show them a good order, a good process for starting. And like I said with Red, the first money you should put in should be for the retirement.
Okay.
The second piece of money that you should save for yourself is for an emergency. And come on, life is for fun. We dream about things. That's why I say the
How
D.
about vacations?
Vacations, saving up for something you know you're going to spend on. Why not? It'll cost you less to save for the vacation than to put it on the credit card, which is charging 18 to 24%
Interesting.
interest. That's a lot.
And sometimes you also need the agreement of the other members of the family to move forward on anything.
Yes, the most important person, of course, usually being your spouse.
Yeah.
And it is best to do those meetings with the spouse so that everyone gets a chance to.
But some spouse delegate that responsibility to one of the two spouses. I mean, they say, okay, my wife is in charge of that, or my accountant check with him, or, I mean,
Right.
sometimes it's somebody else.
Hey, that's great teamwork. I just, another financial professional was asking me to her pre-Cana course. When you get married in the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church says, okay, Mr. and Mrs. soon to be married, you need to go take this course and bring your certificate, or else we're not going to marry you in our church.
Oh, really?
That's called a pre-Cana course. Usually there's a nominal charge for it. So I attended.
They take the course?
They take the course. They want the couple to have a primer on how to have a successful marriage.
Okay.
And they did discuss all kinds of issues, marrying a different faith, a different religion, a different race, whatever.
Number of kids they want.
Number of kids, kids or no kids, and financial things. So she wants me to kind of take over the financial portion. And in this particular pre-Cana course, we did not go into the specifics of, do you get a 401k? Do you set up a simplified employee pension? It's not the nuts and bolts. It's like, who's paying the checks?
Oh.
Who's writing the checks to pay the bills?
Who's going to be working?
Did we agree? Did you tell the other person that you have large personal debt, large student debt? How are you going?
Everybody has to agree.
Yeah, if two people are working but one earns a lot more, do you contribute the same amount to your retirement, or does one person pay more? How is that all going to work? Not that there's a prescribed way, but we should at least talk about it and agree what the plan is for now and what the plan may be in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's a good thing to facilitate.
Yes, so you like your profession then? I assume.
I love teaching people how to think about money and how to get prepared, because when I was 25, about to get married, I was worried. When I was 23, didn't have a care in the world. When I was 23, I was like, what country will I visit next? A couple years later, I'm getting married, I'm going to have a child, and I started thinking about buying a house because I was going to work as a school teacher. That was my plan, to work as a school teacher. I knew then that they didn't pay teachers very well.
Okay.
So I thought, for me to be successful, I should probably buy a small, cheap house now, and then while I'm working as a teacher, that will give me my pension and Social Security. Then by the time it's time to retire, I have the house, I have some money coming in, I'll be okay. And I started worrying about that at 25, and so I had to teach myself, how am I going to save up? How do these financial products work? What do I save my money in? And because I was too afraid to go to a financial professional, because I was afraid of how much they might charge me, I tried to figure it out by myself, only to learn later that they don't really charge anything. You can find financial professionals
Who can guide you?
who can guide you. They're licensed, they're appointed, they're double or triple checked, some by
Yeah.
the state, others by the federal investment regulatory agency. Plus their company, you always want to find one that's with a high quality company. So that's a triple check right there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get the feeling in your gut that this is a good person that has your interests in mind, that's the person to work with.
Okay, now I'm going to go to an area that's not really about advising, but on 100 people,
Mm-hmm.
I read by 65, 35 are already passed away. So they did what you told them to do. They saved for retirement.
Right.
But they're no longer there anyway by 65. 35 of them out of 100.
That's
so,
true.
So you actually planning for the remaining 65% of the people who are
Yes.
going to remain on Earth by 65.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
some might choose to retire earlier than 65.
Right. Your choice to retire is always yours. It's just dependent upon how much you've saved up,
Yeah.
such that your savings can pay you some kind of monthly check so you can live off. Hopefully, you've been paying into Social Security, so you can draw a small amount of money from that.
Yeah.
And if your company, although this is rare nowadays, if your company has set up another retirement plan for you, such as a pension or deferred compensation,
Which is rarer.
which is extremely rare, only certain professions, usually law firms.
Higher professions. I mean, higher upper management.
Right. Over the last 40 years, all of the responsibility for having your retirement has been pushed to you, the client.
Everything is on you.
Yes, Social Security was brought out in the 40s, the 30s. It was proposed. In the 1970s, everyone started doing something called the 401k, which was actually not created for normal people. That was created for executives. It was a tax dodge so that
Okay.
they could get a little bit richer.
Or a tax break.
And then financial firms started to figure out, well, anyone can really participate in this. We just have to set it up. But they're
Okay.
expensive to run.
Mm-hmm.
And then 20 years ago, Senator William Roth, was advocating for an additional retirement plan called what is now called the Roth IRA,
Yeah.
which is, you don't get to put very much money in it,
But you can put as much as you want.
yes, and there's fewer restrictions on pulling the money out, and all that money comes out tax-free.
Oh, okay.
Free is always good.
59 and a half, you can start taking it out. No, you
You
don't have
can-
to wait to 65.
The profits you can start taking out at 59 and a half, the piece of money that you put in,
Yeah. Can
you-
be withdrawn.
you can withdraw it. Usually
But-
it's the company that's
Oh,
managing the funds.
oh.
They have their own rules. They said, look, you promised to let us work with this for a nice long time. Now you're trying to take it out, and you just put it in a week ago.
Oh,
We
only
don't
the
like that.
money you put in, you can withdraw.
You can withdraw. You can withdraw. The IRS doesn't care about that part.
But the growth part
The growth
stays.
part is supposed to come out when you're at retirement age. which
65.
is 59 and a half.
59 and a half, okay.
I know it's an odd number, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, why and a half? Did you ever wonder why there's and a half?
I'm sure some senator made a good argument for that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, maybe based on statistics.
I think so.
Okay, so it's all about calculation. Even when you do your life expectancy, it's about statistics.
It is, but we only live for ourselves, right?
Yeah, we
We-
don't know what is going to happen.
None of us know, but it's always good to plan, because what happens oftentimes.
What if part of the 65% that might go further than 65 years old?
Yes, that's the bigger fear, that you're actually going to live a good long time, and then
But
it's
there will
not
be
free
a
to live.
small percentage of us. I mean,
Well, they say now, I've heard that the person that will live past 125 has already been born.
oh, because of the advances.
Advances in medicine, food, and health. So that means that person better plan pretty carefully.
Yeah, and also the person who retired the earliest, like 50, will live to be 84, as opposed to the person who worked till 65, he will live only 3 more years. So the shorter you work, the higher
Right.
your life expectancy. So that if you want to live a long life, you have to retire earlier than 65.
Well, let's see. My grandfather lived to 103.
And he retired when?
He pretty much, I think he was fully retired by the time he still always had the farm, so he was
Oh.
always receiving
his
some
own
income.
boss. Oh.
But I think he's stopped working full time around 75.
Oh, but because he was his own boss, there was not as much stress.
Right. He was,
So there's a level of stress to take into consideration.
well, farmers are really good at putting up with a lot.
Oh,
Because they live at the mercy of taxes, of weather, of vagaries in the financial markets.
And he was
And
very
he
tough.
managed he was very tough. And my grandmother, she lived to 101.
Oh, so
so-
you have a good gene in you.
Yeah, so that means I really have to count my pennies to make sure they last. But
Oh, you have to invest well for your retirement.
exactly.
You're
exactly.
one of the few that will outlive 65. Okay.
There's always a chance. There's always a chance, and I'm working towards it. But in the meanwhile, what I really want to do is just help other people. I see so many people just struggling and worried about money,
No.
and I try to say, just one, stop worrying about it,
Mhm.
and two, take some actions. Learn about it a little. And now you'll probably need to rely on a professional, so it's your job to meet some professionals, to find the ones that are licensed. They should be licensed. They should represent a high quality company, and you should have the genuine impression that they care about you,
Okay.
not about what they're selling you.
Okay. Is it true, since you're in the financial world, that 76% of American people live paycheck to paycheck? Is it true?
Oh, that seems to be the standard. That so many people. I was shocked when I first came into this business. I went to one of my. We have many people that work for my company. They're full-time lawyers.
Mm.
All they can do is advise clients for free. Our
Okay.
clients for free.
Okay.
And I said, Melissa, I just did a few fact finders, and I found out that some of these people have credit card bills, $15,000, $20,000. And she just looked at me and she said, Rafael,
That's it.
nowadays, below 10,000 is the goal. I was in shock because I never carried a credit card bill that high. Not that I'm a saint. It just didn't
That
make
you're very
sense
careful.
to me
Oh, okay.
to carry something that costs that much. Because remember, that means for every $100, you have to spend an extra 20
Yeah.
just on the finance.
Yeah, the average Americans has $12,000 in credit card debt, so you're not too far from that if you say 10.
Right.
I mean, so that's the average anyway. So anybody has 12,000 is normal.
Right. But on the other hand, I do meet a good number of people who, without any special access to a financial professional, have managed to save
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Okay.
So it's possible no matter what. It really comes down to having a purpose and knowing what vehicle. So I try to teach people, first, most young people, when they start off in life, they figure out cash flow pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
You get your check. Hopefully your rent, your food, your fun doesn't cost more than that weekly check. That's cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're successful there, you've won the
Basics,
first.
your basics.
You've won the first test.
Round. The
first round.
Okay.
But then there's that upper level, and I try to tell people that this is where the game is really won.
Oh.
Handling your liabilities. That's the credit card, the school loan, big bills that can't be paid off with one paycheck.
Yeah, you gotta manage that.
You have to manage that. But even if you manage that, you haven't won yet. You've just been a good consumer. You really have to win in the area of assets.
Oh, that's a different ballgame.
That's
25% of the population who can do that.
But anyone that can set up a 401k can win that game.
Oh.
Because you in the assets category, it's your 401k, maybe it's your real estate, maybe it's a side account, maybe it's even a bank account. It can be a variety of things. But the idea is that in that box, you are taking some part of your paycheck and buying something that will pay you in the future.
Right.
That's all it is.
That's not good for people who want to live day by day. I mean,
It's not, but sometimes someone just hasn't shown them,
oh, that they should.
or how it works.
Oh,
Just show how it works.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I try to sketch it out in a very simple way. In fact, I've toyed with the idea of just saying, look, we can do your entire financial balance sheet using 4 yellow Post-its.
Oh, okay.
Very
No.
simple.
No, it depends of the goal of the person. If the goal of the person is to build a big family, then their goal is to spend as much as possible on that family and not to save for their own personal retirement. But if the goal of the person is to have just one kid, then it's possible. Or 2 kids, then it's possible.
Well,
Because if you have more
absolutely.
than 2 kids, then your priorities are your kids, not the retirement.
And that's natural. In fact, I with this self-same couple that I had on Friday, they do plan on having children. I said, well, now's the perfect time for you to be saving for retirement.
Oh.
Because when the children do come,
Yeah.
you'll be spending on the children. You'll have less money, time, and attention to put into retirement. But the money that you put in retirement in the years before you have children, that money will continue to grow. So why not
Why not start now?
start now and heavily fund it? Because when the ballet lessons, and I just had my
Daughter?
my brother-in-law is
Oh.
in town for the holiday, and he was talking about how much the ballet lessons are costing
Oh.
for his 2 daughters. And he said, yes, it's this much a week or this much a month. And I said, well, there's your retirement plan right there.
Oh, if you
it's gonna be in
if you cut
tutus.
their ballet, you can retire.
No, it's yeah, and sometimes it feels that way, but it really is having a plan,
Yeah.
keeping it under control, and reviewing it once in a while. Using a professional is best.
Do you advocate what people like Susie Horman and all that says, oh, cut down on the Starbucks every day, cut down on this and that? Do you advocate that?
Okay, since we tend to get paid in a finite paycheck,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The money's going to flow. In fact, I never do a budget.
Oh, okay.
I haven't done a budget
Yeah.
in 25 years. I call it a spending plan.
Oh, just up to so much for food, up to so much for.
Well, I got into the habit. For 20 years, I was a independent contractor. I did fundraising and mostly nonprofit events to raise money
For other companies, for other
for
nonprofit.
for other nonprofits. And so sometimes I would get 3 checks in a month. Sometimes I would get 1. Sometimes I would get no check. It depends on how many jobs I had going at a time.
Okay.
And so I had to be very careful about how I spent my money. So I would always flip the check over, to, the envelope that the check came in, and quickly sketch out my little grid system of how much from that check I was going to save for whatever it is that I needed. How much I was going to save in this account for rent, how much for my children. So when you're in a process like that, you quickly see that your discretionary spending, the Starbucks, nothing against Starbucks.
Oh yeah, but
it's
people,
gotta come
what
from
people
somewhere.
do every day.
Right. So one of my favorite, national best-selling financial professional writers is David Bach.
Okay.
And he often used, in his homey way, the latte factor.
Yeah.
Calculating the cost of lattes over a week, multiplying it by 52 weeks to show how that piece of money was costing them. But then he would extend it. He would show how that money, if it were put into some financial vehicle and grown at a certain rate, how much that would be.
But that's living in the future rather than living in the now.
Right.
Because what if you die tomorrow? You didn't enjoy that cup of whatever you wanted, I
Right.
mean, with that chocolate.
So
or-
then you have to do some arbitrage.
yeah,
right.
You have to
So-
decide what's worth it to enhance the quality of your life and what is not necessary.
Yeah. So is it the Starbucks or maybe
The movies or
maybe the movies or maybe maybe you just get 1 Starbucks a day as opposed to 2,
okay,
right?
yeah, that could be a solution. Yeah, no, I mean you can play on the discretionary account as you wish.
And it is a good game. I used to, when I was 25, 26, and I had to manage my budget, I would actually print out a small Excel type spreadsheet with all the days of the week, and I would write down what I was spending my money on. And that trained me to see, I spend my money very frivolously sometimes,
On some things.
and some things were worth it or necessary. And so you start to become very conscious and present to how you're spending your money. I did that for months.
And you became better?
I became much better.
Oh.
Much better.
Okay.
I realized some of the things that I was buying was just not important to me. But the things I was saving for, such as I was paying a mortgage on a house at the time, that was very important to me.
You don't want to lose your house.
Don't want to lose that house. Oh, sometimes I would worry about that mortgage check because I would write the check and I knew there wasn't money in the bank. So I would take cash and go put money in the bank, stand
Just
in
to make
line,
sure
just to
it
make sure that check would clear.
Okay, yeah, but it doesn't affect only people on a budget. Like some people are very wealthy, billionaires, like the guy on Shark Tank. He say, "I refuse to pay $2.50 for coffee when it costs me 25 cents to make it at home." So that means it's not affecting the common people. It's people who are very rich are also conscious of these frivolous expenses.
Yes, they are. They are. Sometimes they're more conscientious. I met a gentleman who works at a very prestigious
Company?
Yeah, a very prestigious financial company, and they're all paid very well. And I mentioned to him, "Oh, by the way, I happen to know what building you're in San Francisco because I go to the gym that's
There.
in that building." And he
Okay.
said, "Oh, yeah, I'm not a member there. It's too expensive." And I thought,
You were shocked.
I was very surprised. Now, it is a little expensive, that gym. I've usually gone to
Yeah.
very basic gyms.
Okay.
But I'm at a different time in my life, and I feel that I can spend frivolously in this arena, and I'm making use of it. So
Yeah.
why not? He
So
set up a gym at his home in his garage.
Oh,
So
that's way
that's
too-
great. Now it makes him happy because probably while he's working out, he's thinking, "Wow, I'm getting a great bargain." And me, when I'm at my gym, spending probably a little too much, I'm thinking, "Hey, I'm being
Meeting
really good
people.
to myself. Well, I'm meeting people, but I'm really being really generous with myself in this one instance."
Oh, okay.
And frugal in
On
other
other area.
areas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's choices in life that we make if we think it's worth it to our quality of life or not.
exactly.
It's
Exactly.
individual. So you don't advise people on things that are super personal to them, like whether they were going to use a gym or whether they're going to use.
If they want to talk about it, I'm happy to
You
make the
open.
time. Yeah.
You open to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So.
Sometimes they just want to double check their thinking. Is it okay if I do this?
Mm,
I have told clients, I have one, she has multiple spreadsheets on her spending,
yeah.
and she's always seems worried
And
about
she
how
asks
much
you
she's
advice.
saving. And I say, yeah, I give her my advice, and then I say, it's okay. Spend some money.
Yeah.
What, just symbolically, take an extra $25 and blow it on, I don't know, buy
Yourself.
something.
On yourself, like go to a
You're
club
doing,
at night.
yeah, I say you're doing okay. If you keep this up, you're going to be okay. And if there's an interruption in your income and your savings plan, you're still going to be okay. I have confidence in you. And other people, they need a little more of the stern teacher, the stern parent. It's like, we better get started. You better open that account and put money in.
Oh, okay.
Every person
Yeah.
needs something different.
It's mostly the very young people, like under 30, who are careless with money because they go out at night more. They like
There's
to
nothing
go
wrong
out.
with that. There's nothing wrong with
No,
that.
there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong. That's what I'm saying. They're not as careful.
They their world experiences that is limited, right?
Yeah.
They haven't seen or experienced that much. I got a reminder of that. Many people are surprised to find out that my children are as old as they are because they
Really?
think that I'm not that old.
Yeah.
But a number of years ago, my daughter was on an exchange program to Germany,
Yeah.
and she's going to a German school, and she calls me one day and says, they took me to this wonderful musical in the middle of a train station, and there's people rolling around on roller skates, singing the songs. It's all in German. I have no idea what they're saying, but I loved it. And I
Oh.
let her talk about it for like 15 minutes, and I said, gee, honey, I'm really glad you saw that. When Starlight Express was popular here, it was the big thing. And she said, you've heard of it?
Yeah.
And I realized, I was shocked, but I realized that's right. She's only been on the planet for a short period of time. Whereas for me,
You already knew
it's
about it.
yeah, it's old news. And that really refreshed my memory that I've experienced many things, made many mistakes, learned many things that someone in their teens and 20s, they just haven't gotten around to it yet. And they don't know what's out there for life. So when I do have the chance to talk to a young person, and volunteering for City College, I do get to talk to many young people. I try to encourage them. Not anyone can say, well, you should be doing this. Anyone can say that. I try to explain why. I try to point out to them that they have a tremendous advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them, I have people that are older than you with a lot of money, and they wish they had what you have. You have your youth,
Oh.
you have your health, and you have time.
Mm-hmm.
Don't waste it. Find out ways to how you can start saving for the future, saving for fun. You want to take a trip around the world? Open an account today. Start putting money in that around the world account today. I traveled when I was young because I knew it was the best time to travel before I had a mortgage payment and kids and other obligations. So I encourage them to do that too.
And then soon you might move to another phase of your life where it's time to spend.
Absolutely. Time to spend, time to enjoy your time.
Yeah.
And money is, some people, this is waxing philosophical, but money is really just energy.
Yeah.
So it can be bad energy, it can be good energy. It's no fun when money is always tight. And it's also no
Through
fun
obligations.
yes. It's also no fun when you feel like you can't spend. Sometimes,
It's restricting.
yes, it is. It's restricting, it's constricting. That's no fun. Life is for spending time with people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best thing about life.
Oh, yeah, I agree. It makes you live longer, too.
Absolutely.
So it was an interesting interview. I'm sure your clients also enjoy your insights on your experience because you do have experience about life by now. So thank you for being here on
Thank
All
you for
About
having
Your
me.
Profession, and look forward to meet you again. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.